If you're not leveraging it for that you're just saying busy work, it's going to be flooded with Instagram, Facebook, or whatever the attention magnets that we have in our ecosystem is. And to really understand that is to say, holy crap, we've gained all this mental real estate that calling a customer or showing a customer a process is at the tip of our fingers. We can email hundreds of thousands of customers at the touch of a button through automation. But if you're not leveraging that new gained access to mental real estate, to becoming the best version of yourself, you're losing the coaching opportunity that's laying bare in front of us.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of You're in Charge. I'm your host, Glenn Pasch. And as you know, this is the podcast that helps those of you that find yourself now in charge of a team or a project build the skills necessary to become successful. And whether you're a brand new to management or you're an experienced manager, each week we bring some fantastic guests like the one I have today to help you build some skills, fill your toolbox up so that you can continue on the journey and become the manager and leader that you want to be. And so I'm really excited about my guest today and the topic we're going to talk about. He is John Acosta. He is the CEO of VTech Dealer IT. Focuses on cybersecurity and data security, as well as leadership around technology, which is a fascinating take in the automotive industry. So, John, thank you so much for coming, and I appreciate your time.
Good to see you, Glenn, and thank you for having me. I know this is going to be a fun and exciting conversation, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Great. So, before we start, talk a little bit, share a little bit about what your company does, but more importantly, what I always like to talk about with leaders is, how did you end up here? You know, how did you come up with this? Because it's a very unique company, especially in automotive and maybe for large companies. You're always leaning on someone like your company, but how did this journey start for you?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll kind of go to the beginning. I was in the military. I was in the Air Force, and I was a jet engine mechanic. You know, knuckle dragging, knuckle busting, working on airplanes, fixing jet engines, and I designed and patented a product for hospice care, for end-of-life care. And my grandfather was in end-of-life care, and then I had a group of investors that were based out of Miami, out of South Florida, and it was a family office, and came down, launched a product, won Product of the Year for Caregiver Magazine, and then it kind of stalled there. We didn't have enough money, the national distribution. Have you seen the movie War Dogs?
I don't know if I have.
Jonah Hill. And
yes,
Mavericks,
yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And he's going around selling
Miles
high thread
Teller.
count.
Miles Teller.
Yeah, exactly. I was doing the same thing around the same time, trying to, sell my product to end-of-life care in South Florida. It didn't work, right? So sitting around the family office, and they owned a dealership. And I kept hearing the dealership was like hemorrhaging money. Walked in, saw a ton of dysfunction. My last job in the Air Force, I was a quality assurance inspector. So I know how to do audits.
Right.
And walked in, saw a ton of dysfunction, saw some wonky things going around, as one would see in a dealership that's hemorrhaging money.
Right.
And went in, cleaned house, restructured the special finance company. And then our IT guy and I became friends. He would come into my office, and we would talk about the projects and what he was doing, and I'd give him leadership books and management books, and I was myself in this entrepreneurial journey. And my project wrapped up with a family office. We got it back to humming, right? And he said, "Hey, you want to come into the company?" So I invested some money into the company, and 11 years later, I'm here as the CEO of VTech Dealer IT, and we provide IT and cybersecurity for car dealers, new and used car dealers across the country. And I like to think of myself as a technology enablement company, as we remove excuses,
right,
and just make sure that technology is not something that's barnacles on the ship of a dealership.
Great. Hey, let's pause for 1 second. Look at me, because you're looking at your laptop. There you go. I know it's going to be weird, but you can go back and forth, but so that way
I'll move it. So
that way.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. Now I can see your eyes.
Yeah, there we go.
Great. We'll pick up right from there.
Yeah. All right. Perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So that's a fascinating thing. So you ended up, now you're here at CEO, but I want to go back to that idea of that audit for that dealership. And you're right. When I go in and I'm working with dealers on it could be a specific project, but there's so many tentacles. You can't just look at that one project or issue in a vacuum because there's so many things that touch on that. But around this idea of cybersecurity and data, we hear all the time on the news all about data hacks and security breaches. And to the average person, they don't know if they should be scared, if it's real, what does this mean, what's going on. And so when somebody says that to you or to the person sitting here listening about this, cybersecurity sounds scary. What is cybersecurity? And when you hear these data hacks and things like that, what should most people worry about or not worry about?
Yeah, so I think the low hanging fruit is not to be a target and to have a decent cybersecurity posture. And what that looks like is multi-factor authentication, making sure that your data is secure, making sure that you have a plan. And this all boils down to management at the end of the day.
Right.
It's your ability to respond to a crisis. And this applies to, it's a philosophy of leadership rather than a philosophy of, the propeller head sitting in the back worrying about the sky, when is the sky going to fall?
Right.
The same principles that applied during the CDK cybersecurity hack applied during a hurricane when we have that happen. I'm based in South Florida. That when a hurricane comes, it's the same thing. We've had a dealership burn down, and then we responded to that. We've had Tesla batteries burn up and burn down an accounting department. Just the preparedness and say, in case of emergency, I have a lever that I know is going to respond. 90% of my job is to say, when I call, I answer the phone, and my whole team and the culture of my company is based on that principle. Is to say, when you say jump, we say how high and get you back to selling and servicing cars. The technology part is just something that we happen to do, and we're nice while we're doing it. I like to think myself as your little cousin or your nephew that knows how to do IT and knows how to help you figure out your iPad for a grandma. We've seen, I had this conversation with the CFO of a $1.5 billion dealer group, right? Mm-hmm. And calls me panicked at 7:00 at night on a Thursday and a month, and what is freaking out about something. I don't receive help desk calls, right?
Right.
I talk to executives and dealer principals and owners, and she's calling me and says, I lost all my email. In a massive panic. I lost all my email. And so I jump on her computer, I look at what's going on, and she had collapsed the inbox on her Outlook.
Right.
And rather than making her feel like that Jimmy Fallon skit on SNL, like an idiot, right? Like, putting up my glasses and being very judgy, my response is, I don't even know why Microsoft does that. That happened to me. It made me panic. I understand you're in a frenzy for a completely different reason that has nothing to do with this technology thing. I'm just going to remove that little piece from you being able to do your job, and so you can run freely towards doing that. And then the next time you call, that you have that person of confidence that you trust that is going to keep that close to the chest and just help you do your job.
Well, what I like about that, there's a couple things that popped into my head. One was the fact that you're not making somebody feel silly because, and I think that's easy sometimes to do, or you might have some people on your team that don't understand that their tone of voice is slightly condescending.
Correct.
And that ties into, you and I have talked about this previously, off air, about this idea of inspecting your people and coaching your people, because when, yes, you don't talk to those frontline support people, but really the success of your company are those frontline people, because they're the ones who are working with, your clients, who that client will say, I don't like that person. We're going to go find someone else. Not because your service is less than adequate or not excellent. It's the attitude. Every time I pick up the phone and call somebody, I feel stupid. Every time I call that person, it's difficult to understand, or it takes too long, so that impact down there. But the other piece that I really liked was this idea of preparedness. And at least that person knew who to call.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's people out there, and this can apply both to your business life and your personal life. I know my wife and I went through this, and I think when you have kids, all of a sudden it hits you is, well, if something happens to us, do we have that lever? Do we have someone we can call? But more importantly, do we have all of our important data, credit cards, banking accounts, all names, numbers, is it in somewhere easily accessible, like a thumb drive somewhere that also someone knows where to go find it, right? You don't think about those things because you're just doing business. And a lot of times those things don't come up until there's an episode.
Correct.
And then you go, oh my God. So from that perspective, how do you help businesses understand that idea of to be prepared without scaring them into saying, at some time your whole business could collapse or blah, 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 versus saying, are you prepared? Do you have something in place, and helping them understand that investment, it's like insurance. It may never need it, but when you need it, you sure as hell need it.
That's such a great question, and I've really wrestled with that, because I started off being like, you have to be prepared, and you have to, Chicken Little, right? The skull's gonna,
this could happen to you.
Correct, but it does.
It does.
We have a ton of dealerships in California, fires, and earthquakes, and you just have to really be prepared for some of these things.
Right.
But what I just the decade of experience that we've been doing this and building this around some groups that have. We've seen some dealers do some really interesting things: buy dealerships out of bankruptcy, consolidate auto groups, take the profitability over a 7 to 10 year period and sell for all the money. Mm-hmm. And what ended up happening is that technology enabled them to be able to do that.
Right.
And so the management principles and the technology enablement that we provided for that group, and I just listened to what they needed and I just provided solutions. That's
right.
it. It wasn't, I'm not reinventing the wheel. When COVID hit, agility. And then that auto group didn't see these dips that happened. And
mm-hmm.
that turns into multiples for when you're doing a buy sell. And
right.
when the publics come in and pay you all the money for the dealer groups, you did something right. Not to say that technology was the thing that that gave it the multiple, but it's the combination of empowering the leadership team to leverage the technology that they have, hold their team accountable through the use of technology, and really make the dealership agile and not be on the buy-sell side because you got a ransomware attack, but be on the buy-sell side because your organization is an incredible organization that a large public sees an opportunity for.
That's a great point. And so I want to unpack something you said. And audience, I hope you're writing down this and really paying attention. And what I'm happy about is the tactical things that you talk about. But that idea of agility, but more importantly, you touched on this, and again, it's easy to gloss over. One, it's understanding, do you have the right tech stack for you, right? I think you had just mentioned you were at a 20 group, and that's a meeting of, dealers, and they bring in a speaker. But what happens sometimes is somebody sitting there and they may hear you speak and go, oh, that's what I want. I just want it. Or they have someone else in the group saying, I use John. Oh, I just want it. Versus really understand, is what John delivers right for me, mm-hmm. right? Does it fit? Not just fit from a tech standpoint, fit the culture. Are we going to use this? And so it's a long way around to really, I want to focus in on that piece of that where you say, holding your team accountable to using the technology you have, right?
Yes.
I want to repeat that. Holding your team accountable to using the technology that you have. When you're brought in either for audits or when you're working with somebody and onboarding, walk me through that, because I find that to be a friction point, one, because of change, but also two, it's the accountability piece. It's above it, right? So if they're not using it, it's not their fault. It's who's holding them accountable. So talk me through that, because I think that's a really valuable conversation point.
Man, I don't want to, kind of pump myself up, but there's this
You
quote
can
that
go,
I love.
you can pump yourself up.
There's this quote that I love that is, when you know the way broadly, you see it in all things. And when you've done this, right, Glenn, there's certain people that have this perspective, is that when you walk into a dealership, and Jonathan Dawson and I were having this conversation, it's like a dealership that's named after the owner or named after the town has a very different feel and texture. Call this woo-woo, call this energy, call it whatever you want to call it, right? There's a texture that you have in an organization. And sometimes organizations are mom and pop that are well run. Mm-hmm. Some of them are corporate that have terrible culture. But when you start going into an organization, you start seeing the texture of what that organization feels and looks like, and the momentum and the tempo and the cadence and the language that they use. You really start understanding what the spirit, the core of the organization, like really the essence of that organization feels like. And as somebody that's seen a ton of dealerships and seen what works and what doesn't work, I like to find myself as a curator of matchmaking. I'm a connector by DISC assessments, by all my personality profiles. I'm a connector. So I'm like, hey, this might really work for this product, might really work for your organization because you guys are a little bit more progressive, and it's this works. Or I may not. I might say, guys, that might be a bad implementation for you guys because it's not this. Or you need to make sure that this implementation goes this way to be able to really get the buy-in from the team. Sometimes the IT room is the graveyard of great ideas.
Right.
We've been talking together for 6 years in Clubhouse, and the IT room suddenly has the digital price chain, the digital Maruni cards, and there's boxes and boxes and boxes of them that some, GSM or GM had this great idea of updating that, and it's 2 years later or 6 months later, it's collecting dust. And the question is why? Do you have proper implementation procedures? Are you getting buy-in from your team? Are you empowering your team to make decisions to make sure that adherence is happening? And that has nothing to do with technology. It's simply management and leadership and buy-in and building that culture in your organization.
No, and you and I touched on that as we were waiting to go live. I think that's the biggest issue. I think the biggest struggle for successful or unsuccessful is that idea of implementation. Yeah. Because automotive, one dealer said to me, it's a business of distractions, right? No matter what your good intention is to do today, I'm going to accomplish this, something happens, you're pulled in a different direction. So you have to be, one, organized to know what I have to accomplish. But number two is, there are a lot of great ideas, but you may hand it off to someone. But if I hand it off to John, does John know how to execute? Have I actually trained John on how to implement a process, build a process? Have I invested in John to lead the team, coach the team? And I believe there's a difference between training and implementation, but often they're considered the same thing. Well, we train them. John came in and told us we're going to do X, Y, Z. We love it. It's great. It's going to be great for our business. We put everybody in a room and everyone nods their head and we check the box that we did our training. And then 2 months later, 6 months later, you find the box of the things in the back, or you go, didn't we do that? Oh, we used to do that. Or you go, oh, this isn't working. And it's not the product. It's not the strategy. It's the implementation, because that takes time. That takes time, and to build that culture of implementation, it still happens. Whatever you were doing in the beginning, it's still happening. And that's where I think you're right, is successful ones have that level of accountability where I always say everybody's on a team. So if you have your frontline people, they report to somebody. Well, that team leader reports to somebody, and that manager reports to somebody, all the way up to the top. And the dealer might report to the manufacturer or a 20 group, or maybe they're in a group and they report to some. That's where there's the disconnect. Somebody in that middle tier stopped holding people accountable, or they just assumed it was going to happen. So for you, because I know you also teach, like you said earlier, you focus on leadership around it. It isn't here's your widget and you're going to be successful. So talk a little bit about your philosophy around how you built your company, because as you said, you're focusing on all hands on deck. We're ready. We're here to help. We're here to support. Not, well, that's not what you paid for. Walk me through this idea of these 10 years of building that. Give the audience some strategies or tips or things that were successful or failed in your journey.
My beginning was I parted from a principle that I didn't know what I was doing. Right. Yes, when I was in the military, I received, leadership training and troubleshooting training, advanced troubleshooting training. And I really have to credit I was in the Air Force. So it was very corporatized. We were doing, it was called AFSO 21 lean methodology back, 20 years ago. And that really created a foundation for me that I didn't know that I knew some of these
Right.
methodologies and, that curse of knowledge that you have. But I basically, when I started getting into the leadership position of the company, I have a customer that is my mentor, Paul Jensen. He's from the Cavalli Auto Group, and Paul took me under his wing. We built a dealership together, and he worked for PepsiCo, worked for Mastercraft, for Ford, was a service manager. Was fixed, built a group all the way up, all the way down, and he's the general guy of an organization, and I'm one of his extensions.
Right.
And I would basically, and he had this relationship with ADP back in the day that you would call, it was Palm Beach Ford Lincoln Mercury, had a massive parts department. They would sell parts, wholesale parts all over the country.
Right.
And was those original IT guys that were just putting systems together and phone systems and setting up ADP systems when they were back in the day. And he had a personal relationship with his ADP reps. So that he would call Atlanta and they needed a part or got hit by lightning. Lightning's a thing in South Florida, right? Got hit by lightning. And by that afternoon, he had a part and he was picking it up at the airport and installing the part. So having that rapid response, personal relationship, to really have that commitment to, I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure that you're back up and running, is how I built the philosophy of the company, right? There's no secrets other than be available, be Johnny on the spot, pick up the phone when somebody answers. If you can't pick up the phone, say, I'll call you back in a short period of time, and then call them back and provide that high level of customer service. And we really built the culture of the company. And I'm very odd in this space. I believe in systems and I believe in patterns.
Right.
That organizational cultures have patterns. And the more that I've, as a leader of the organization, worked on myself, on my biases, on my patterns, on my bull crap, on whatever's holding me back to become the best version of myself, I think in some way that permeates an organization and prevents an organization from being successful. And the combination of those couple things, I read some really impactful books at the beginning. I read Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh. He was the CEO of Zappos.
Oh, I love that book. Yes.
I love that book. Like that book, it really set me into my entrepreneurial journey. The Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey. The Lean Startup as well. Just like do these MVPs, these minimum viable products made to stick. I mean, there's hundreds of other books. Never Split the Difference. These books that I would read over and over, and I would listen to them. I don't read them, right? I would listen to them over and over and over again. So the information would just be in my mind as much as I could absorb it. But it's a combination of, being able to kill my ideas early and say this doesn't work, and to put to bed those things and flush ideas out that didn't work, and just see like what actually worked, and have the customer point me in that direction and keep going down it. And customer service is king at the end of the day. I think more than anything, if you can enable your team to be authentic, to be able to connect, to really be vulnerable in some ways, and to be available, you're going to have a winning formula. That idea to serve, to be of service is an important value and foundation of how I lead the organization.
Yeah, I love that. And it strikes so many chords with me because I had a few mentors. I came from hospitality, as a lot of people know. And so I worked for the I guess the mentor of Danny Myers, who did Shake Shack and all of the Union Square and all of that. And that philosophy was same thing over, we're just going to make this a great experience. We're going to do whatever we have to make it. There was no, well, I did my part. If I did as far as I can go, I went to someone else to continue because the main point was making that person happy or, as you said, available. I have to get you up and running. We are going to figure out a way. And if I can't, I'm going to try and connect somebody else to help you solve this problem, deliver this value. And I think we've all seen it on the vendor side in automotive or in any industry. Even the people who are delivering the services, in this case, dealerships, they talk about service. They talk about customer experience. But that's an end product, and they haven't really talked about the journey of what we have to do that, or inspect it and accountable. They just think, well, if I say it enough, people will interpret that, but everybody's going to interpret it at what they think it is. And now I have 20 people doing different variations of this, and that may not be what it is. But yet we admire all of the companies that have that consistency of structure. We all talk about the Chick-fil-A, and everybody says it's, it's my pleasure, or whatever their catchphrase. We admire the fact that those folks are out there in the the drive-through to speed it up. What a simple little concept, and everyone admires it. But do you take that back to your company and say, how could I do something like that? Or are we doing something like that? Could we do better? Or are we doing it as well as we could? And I love that idea of you saying it's not technology, it's leadership, because you can have the best technology in the world, but if your customer service is horrible, that means your product, I don't want your product as good as it is. I struggle. And so for you, how do you explain that, right? Because I could just hear somebody in the audience going, okay, John, that sounds good. But how do you sit down with a new employee and explain that? How do you help day to day watch that, build that, improve that tactically, so someone can go back and think through, oh, I like that idea. Maybe we should try that.
I think this is an odd kind of take on it, but I think you have to work on yourself first. If you're doing the Hoffman quadrinity process, if you're doing systemic leadership training, if you have to go in a sweat lodge and, sweat out your trauma and your demons, whatever you have to do, some people find that through religion, whatever you have to do to become the best version of yourself and put those demons to rest, I think is step one. And
hold on that. Let's unpack that. So why? I think I know the reason, but for the audience, they're sitting there going, but wait a minute, why does my boss have to fix himself or herself first before I can get better?
So I think that as a leader, the way that you approach your organization permeates or resonates throughout your organization. We've been on this Clubhouse call for we're running on 6 years, I think, at this point.
Yeah, pretty close.
Yeah, close enough, right? Some of the leaders that I most admire, like yourself, Tim Cox, Patrick Abad, Kevin Deutsch, these guys are here to serve. I'm here in the excuses removal business. Find a way to say yes, like Patrick says. Serve your team. Like Tim Cox says, like really have that spirit of service. And that can't come from a place of lack as a leader. You can't come and originate that you're in a place that I don't have enough. You say, I'm in a place that I'm abundant. I have so much to give, and I find meaning and purpose in my life by serving others. And that starts with serving your team. And I want my team to become the best versions of themselves, both personally, professionally, their financial goals. I want them to become the best versions of them. So that's my job, is to empower that. And if I do that as a leader, that's going to reverberate throughout my organization. And the people that are not in sync with that radio station will leave. They'll self-eject quickly because it's dissonant. It's not part of the culture. And you'll start building all of your processes, building all of your company culture, your standard, your SOPs, whatever that is, with that in mind, with that core value of that resonance of who you are as an organization, as a leader. and you'll start attracting the right people into your organization.
And you know what I heard from that, because it made me remember one of my mentors when I was talking with him about, going in and how do you approach, when you're trying to help others and things. And he said, here's the thing. Any manager who's hired into an organization, in 6 months, that team will have good aspects of that leader. They will also start exhibiting the bad habits of that leader. I don't think we focus on that. We hire people because they're supposed to be excellent at X, Y, Z. But are we also paying attention to the fact that, building on your point, I say one thing, I do something else.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you, I want you to be at this training with John. It's very important, but I'm not there.
Yeah.
Or I get up and I leave.
Yep.
And so right then and there, you're saying something to the team subtly that, well, this really isn't important to the leader because they're not here. Or they didn't, even if they came in and they said, I have a meeting, John, do this, they come back later on, or the next day they talk about it and say to the team, fill me in on what you, right? To sink that in. And I think there's also a piece where some people stop in thinking that they need to improve themselves because they've hit a level. And that becomes, you don't see it, but I think over time, it's not going to happen tomorrow. There's a stagnation. And people start to sense it, that they're moving forward, you're not, or they're seeing things and you're not as a leader. And so I love that fact of really, you have to really constantly be working on yourself. If you want your team to grow, you have to grow.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think that giving people permission to do that is important as well. Right.
Right.
And I brought this up in the ON conference years ago. We were talking about leadership, right? It's like, well, it's like, I brought up this point and I think I delivered it incorrectly because I got kind of lambasted in the process. Was, we know that NADA and NCM or these larger organizations focus on dealer school, and the leadership starts at the dealer down, right? And it's like, no, you should start with the porter up. You should start you have like Patrick does, right? Patrick Abad at Beaver Toyota Cummings, Georgia, right? It's like, you're a technician level 1. What does it take the 5 steps to get to a master Beaver, detailer? And every single step has perceived progress and has leadership training baked into what that stair step looks like.
And more importantly for him, and this is for those of you who are hearing that, he not only has it, tells you, here's, to your point, level 1 detailer to level 2 to level 3, level 1 express lube tech to 2 to 3.
Correct.
It's not just in the interview. It's printed up on the wall in a
Everywhere.
big sign everywhere. 5 levels of a salesperson. So you can't just say, I had a great month, I want to move up to be manager. He'll say, well, have you completed this? Have you completed this? Part of it is time. You have to be in that position a certain number of time. You have to achieve X, achieve Y. It's very clear of my steps, and it also saves time for people to not get deluded that they're, higher up or could do more. He's like, I'll get you there, but you have to go up through the proper steps. And I think that's important. Like you said, it's giving them permission to improve, giving them permission to have feedback, give them permission to go, I don't understand what you're talking about, without repercussions. If you're creating an environment of growth, there are going to be people who can pick it up very quickly. Are going to be people who struggle and stumble. Again, going back to one person one of my managers in a restaurant one time says, I just want you to fall forward. I don't want you to fall backwards. If you're going to make a mistake, make a mistake trying, not avoiding. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. Makes sense to me. And that's always stuck with me. I tell my kids that too. Fall forward, not backwards.
Yeah, and if you give them permission to say, if you really thought of this and you said it's good for the company, it's good for the employees, and it's good for the customers, make the decision. Empower them to make the decision and to fail fast and to fail lightly. and to really to empower themselves to be able to do that. But I don't think you can do that unless you have some basic leadership training that you can say, you have permission, you've done your leadership level 1, and that's not going to be NADA, dealer school or whatever that looks like. You can have your own version of what leadership looks like, is empowering your team, having tactical empathy, communication skills, understanding where the customer comes from, giving them the permission to fail, saying you at your level 1 leadership can solve problems with $100 or less. If it's $100 or less, solve that problem immediately, and you have the free reign to be able to do that, as long as you keep it under these bounds and give them structured boundaries where they can grow. And sometimes they'll touch the stove and you'll recorrect and keep moving forward. But you got to empower people to be able to make decisions. What
you've done is you've created a completely dependent team. So those are the managers, when I bring that comment up, is they're the ones who complain that whenever I'm at home at night, I get phone calls. I can't go away on vacation without people blowing up my phone. I can't. I was like, well, then you didn't train them. You've trained them to feel that you're the keeper of the secrets.
Yes.
And you're the only one that can make this decision. And I think that's a very important skill to learn. But you have to train them first how to do that. And then you have to not pick up the phone, or you have to say, what do you think? Instead of giving them the answer.
And, Dan Martell has a book called Buy Back Your Time that hit me so hard between the eyes that it took me about a week to recover from, because I found that I am creating my own chaos out of this, egocentrical, being the center of, I have the answers to all things. I'm a problem solver at heart, right? So if I'm solving problems, I feel like I'm being productive. So I had to realize that about myself, to be like, no. You're doing your team a disservice by not empowering them to make the decisions. So I read Buy Back Your Time, and I said, I need to be able to read this book to protect my time and to protect my intuition.
Yes.
Because I think the genius of everybody comes from the connection with intuition, and chaos completely eliminates that ability. You're just reacting. You're making the most shallow decision that's available for that time and not getting to the root cause of things. And one thing that he says to do, which is the 1-3-1 rule, is, Glenn, you came to me with a problem. Clearly define it. Tell me 3 options of what we could do, and make one of them do nothing, right? If it's a do nothing, it's not that big of a problem that we have to be discussing it at this level. And then the one that you'll stand behind. If you do that on a regular basis and have the whole team in your organization does that, it starts really pushing down these ideas of empowerment, and that I have the authority and the skill set that I'm not first going to get lambasted by my manager because I made the wrong decision.
Right.
And that if I really thought about it, if I really sat down and thought about it for 30 seconds, then I'm going to come up with the best idea because I'm closest to the problem.
Right. And I think for me, what I trained my team on for years was there were stages. Initially in training, they wouldn't remember. So they would come and they would say, hey, here's my issue. Now, I made the same mistake too. Just tell them what to do. Why? Because it's faster. Let's get back to work. Let's get it done. I just was at a dealership working with somebody, and the biggest lesson or thing I was working on with this, the woman who was overseeing this team, is she was just getting it done because she didn't want the team to fail. But she wasn't even getting to her own job because she was doing half of other people's jobs. So I had to learn that I wasn't really doing a service to that person by telling them what to do. So then, same thing, you learn lessons from your voices in the back of your head. You're going, oh, you're not doing, my wife would always say, maybe you should watch one of your seminars because you're doing what you tell others not to do. Right. But it was, then I started asking, well, what do you think? Or what do you remember from training? Because then I would, if I asked them, what do you remember training, John, about this? I'm either going to find one of 3 things. One is you don't remember completely. Okay, now I got to retrain. You sort of remember. Good, you got this piece. Let's fix this piece. Or you're going, yeah, I know exactly what I'm doing. Now it's not a problem of you don't know. It's a problem of you're either choosing not to for whatever reason. That's a completely different conversation. Yeah. But if I'm just sitting here telling you, do this, I'm not doing it. Then the third one was exactly what you were saying. I would start saying, what do you think we should do?
Yeah.
Because then it trained them to come in and say, I'm stuck. I got this one, John. I got A or I got B. I can make a case for both, and that's just means they need more information from you out of your experience to help them add that piece. So next time they go, oh, I know exactly what it is.
And a lot of people, like I just gave like an effective communication training, and people talk on different levels of the same iceberg, right? It's the little tip that's out, and you're talking about leadership, and there's so much of the iceberg that's underwater, and you may be talking at a different level of the iceberg than the person is receiving that information. And I love this concept of seasons or gearing, right? It's like you may have to, if you start a business, you're taking off your hat and you're like, hey, I'm the customer service guy. And then
right.
payroll. And then I'm the legal guy. And then, I have to go to Sunbiz to register whatever, you have to constantly change hats. It's the people that are stuck in first gear when they should be in third, or doing third gear problem when they're in first.
Right.
So really having the right gearing of understanding where you are, and then having the self-awareness to say, oh, I need to, the tools that I were using for, gears 1 and 2 that got me off the finish line, or got me off the start line, and got me off of the hill, that I need to start shifting into third gear, which is that 1-3-1. Are you in the optimization phase?
Yes.
Are you in the startup phase? Because a buy sell, when you're in a buy sell, if you're not in the first gear in startup phase, building the processes, changing the culture, and using these toolings that you have, and you're a big corporate structure that's using the fifth gear, sixth gear management culture on the first gear stuff, it doesn't necessarily make sense. So I think it's a lot about compatibility and where you are and understanding. And that's why I always go back to systems.
Right. And I think, as someone who delivers that type of information, you're right. It's very hard when you have a group of 20 people. They're all at different levels, experiences, understanding, competence. And you have to figure that out. But that circles back to what I was saying about implementation, is I could deliver this to you and you're going, Glenn, I got it. And I go out and you're running with it. And I'm just checking to make sure you're running with it. You're like, I'm good. Someone else might be, I got this part, but I need to be there to help implement that to make sure, versus, oh, you got the training wheels on. That means I got to come every day until I can come every other day, until I come once a week, right? But you as a coach need to understand it. And that's that pivot between manager and coach. You got to put your coach hat on to say, I'm going coaching now, versus, like you said, I'm the IT person, or I'm the manager, which is I'm the manager now standing back. I'm looking at numbers. I'm designing the systems.
Yeah.
But that's completely different mindset, activities. Then I'm coaching my team how to do this. That's a lot of what's going on. So when you're out there, as we move into sort of the last part of this, is coaching a lost art out there, or is it just not done? Is that what you're seeing in terms of when you're going into, and like you said, I walk in and my eyes are open, and, Jonathan Dawson, our good friend, says that too. I look around, I come in one thing, but I see all these other things. Is it just, I don't want to say that simple, but is it the idea of coaching is a lost art?
If I can take it a level higher,
please.
Right? And I love this question, because I think we're talking about mental real estate. And when I mean mental real estate, is that so much of our life has been automated, and contextually everything has gotten so much easier that if you don't have a strong foundation, it gets tied up by noise. And I think that coaching is to identify what that problem is from the get-go and say, that's why I always go back to the person. Technology is only an enablement, right? To what? The enablement is to you become the most authentic, best version of you to be able to provide that customer service to the clients that are stepping through that door. Mm-hmm. If you're not leveraging it for that you're just saying busy work, it's going to be flooded with Instagram, Facebook, or whatever the attention magnets that we have in our ecosystem is. And to really understand that is to say, holy crap, we've gained all this mental real estate that calling a customer or showing a customer a process is at the tip of our fingers. We can email hundreds of thousands of customers at the touch of a button through automation. But if you're not leveraging that new gained access to mental real estate, to becoming the best version of yourself, you're losing the coaching opportunity that's laying bare in front of us.
I like that. I like that idea of mental real estate, because you've expanded. It's also, I think someone said it about time, is that with technology, a task that used to take 2 hours takes 20 minutes. Well, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
We're at half an hour. What are you doing with the other hour and a half?
Yeah.
Right. And I think that ties into what you're saying, is that I gave all this technology to people. Am I are they even using that tech? Goes back to what we started with. Are they using the technology correctly to deliver what we want? Is it delivering I could call DoorDash technology now. My food can be brought to me, but if it's slow or it's cold or the customer, or even Uber, I click a car shows up. It's great. I get in, but if the car is dirty, the person is rude, whatever that is, that technology doesn't matter anymore. The ease of technology. So who took it upon themselves to help them get better? And in the dealerships, I agree with you. We have technology at our fingertips, but it can't replace the customer service. People still, we're still in a people business.
Yeah. And how do you kill a great BDC agent? Like, step one, you make them make 1,000 mindless calls. Right?
Yes.
Per day. Step two, you get them to nobody answers the phone, right? Or the customers start treating them like garbage, right? If I can say your productivity is 1 to 100, and I can take 80% of that to get automated through AI, through machine learning, through process automation, through not even heavy technology, and I can serve you up the best 20%, that you're going to become the best Glenn to charm the pants off of that customer and to provide and to listen to the nuances and the conversation that's happening. Let's say, I haven't been sleeping because I just had a kid, and do you need a Sienna versus Mitsubishi Mirage or whatever that is to provide to serve up the best version of you? Then you're using the technology the wrong way.
But it goes back to what you said about Tony Hsieh, about Zappos. What was revolutionary about his approach to customer service was it was so anti what was currently going on, because most customer service centers measured, like you said, speed of the call, get to as many calls, how many people. And he was the antithesis to say, if somebody needs to talk to this person for a half an hour, I'm good. Yeah. And there were stories of somebody sitting there for an hour and they didn't get in trouble. Now, most people in that industry, their heads were blowing off going, you're never going to be successful. So to your point, if I could take 80% of of your time, again, going back and giving you your time back, are you going to spend 100% of your time giving great service to that 20% of the customers? Or are you just going to continue to do your 20% mediocre, and then 80% of your time is on Instagram, walking around, do it? You see what I'm saying? I think that's a fascinating way to look at it, but goes back to the word we've used multiple times. Leadership has to say, I think managing by metrics like that, like you said, 100 calls, this call, that's lazy management. Yeah. That's lazy leadership, because you're not there. Versus I've been trying to change the narrative to just say, how many people have you talked to today? I want you to focus on conversations. That's all I want. If you can have 8 good conversations today, we're going to have a great day. Then you start thinking, is this the right time to call John? Because he'll pick up the phone at lunch versus 2:30 and everybody leaves messages, but I check my box and I'm not going to get yelled at. Yeah. And if we're doing work in order not to get yelled at, that is never going to be a great customer experience for anybody.
So, that begs the question, like, is it better to be effective or efficient? And I love effective rate. Effective rate is what are you swinging the bat once and you're getting on base? That's all I care about. Mm-hmm. Not efficiency, right? It's not at this point, if you increased, what would be better for a dealership? To increase their effective rate tenfold or to increase their efficiency tenfold? What would bring more return on effort, right?
Sure.
So that's really the question that you want to be asking, is like, what can I do to make my team as effective as possible?
And that ties right into the conversation, and we'll save that for another day when you come back. But the whole conversation around AI, because AI is misunderstood, in my opinion, part because some of what everyone's calling AI is not really AI. But the fact is, people are going, oh, well, then I don't need people. I'll just put AI, or AI is going to make us efficient. But is it effective? Is it really? Are we using it? Are we integrating it? Are we helping each other with it? Or is it just, well, we have it, check the box.
Yeah.
And it's delivering a horrible customer experience because now I have 3 people trying to reach out to me. This one, AI, is reaching out going, hey, John, I haven't heard from you, but you and I have been talking. But the AI doesn't realize that John and I are talking. It only realizes when John talks to the AI. But so you see it where people are typing, customers are going, can I just talk to one person? Who are all these people? Who do you work? We're causing confusion with efficiency versus using this technology, as you said, to be more effective and getting people's time back. But if you're going to give people their time back, you better teach them how to fill that time and use that time versus assuming they're going to.
You know, I always, you and I fly a lot, right? We're constantly flying all over the country. Do you care what technology is flying the plane?
No.
As long as you hear that cool and calm, collected voice saying that we're now traveling at 30,000 feet, and we're going to see a little bit of turbulence, and that you see at the pilot at the end of the hallway when you're getting out, say, have a great flight, guys.
Right.
And she, they look extraordinarily competent, cool, calm, and collected, and something's going on. It's like, hey, guys, we got to return to the airfield because we have a little bit of a problem. Right. You don't care if a machine did that, figured out the technology of the engine temperature gauge, that high-speed turbine was going to blow up, or you don't care. The only thing that you care about is that you got that warm and fuzzy feeling that a human being that's authentic, that is in control, that's creating that connection with you, that is at the helm, right? So all the technology in the world, aviation goes back, and I took a class called The Human Factors in Aviation. If you automate too much, pilots will fall asleep and fly into mountains. If you don't automate enough, pilots will get tired, fall asleep, and fall into a mountain. They're both are the same outcome.
Right, right.
It's the middle part that you have enough engagement to say, we're cruising at 30,000, 35,000 feet, but you have enough input that you keep the pilot engaged, and they're managing the systems. And then to create that, all right, guys, thanks for the flight, smooth landing, everybody shake your hand on the way out, and you keep on your merry way.
That's what I tell my clients, or when people ask me about AI, I said it's great, but use it as a co-pilot.
Yeah.
It's not the pilot. You are not their co-pilot. They are your co-pilot, and they're helping you, but you still need to be involved. Listen, man, I could talk to you. Look at this. Time flies. We have such a great, it's amazing. It's amazing. At the end of each show, I ask a few things, simple questions about you more than anything else. So I call it the one. So whatever comes to your mind. We've already talked about books, because usually I ask about what things are inspiring you and things like that. And we have a long list, and we'll put some into the show notes. But what's one of the things that you are most proud of in your life?
How I show up for my family.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Love that. There's not even much more to say to that.
Yeah.
What's the one thing that you're working on yourself that a year from now that you're going to look back and go, I'm glad I invested the time in that?
I think profound personal work, right? Whatever that is going to enable you to become the best version of you. I have a certain methodology for what that is for me. I'm the common denominator for all of my problems is me. Right. So that assumption of responsibility, I think, is critical, right? And say, I don't beat myself up. I carry myself with some grace, right? I talk to myself with some grace, but know that I'm a work in progress. And that's the thing that I'm most proud of. Being able to do that is open the door of opportunities in my life to connect with people like, our like you, and our morning group clubhouse is, it's just really profound to be in the presence of incredible leaders that care so much about their industry and their customers and their teams. That's what I know that if I keep doing that, I'm going to be successful in whatever I engage in.
I love that. Because you say you travel, where's one place that you haven't been yet that you want to go to?
I'd love to go to Japan.
Me too.
Yeah, I'd love to go to Japan. Yeah.
My brother-in-law went there. He loved it. I always wanted to, it was that or China. Like there was something when I was young, I always want to stand on the Great Wall of China. Like it just, that piece of architecture always just stuck with me. But Japan was the efficiencies and things.
I'm a fan of Kaizen and some, like the methodologies, like just like it being incredible at just creating ink. Like this is the highest quality ink in the planet, and we've been doing it for 1,000 years. Like just like that, that part is incredible. Yeah.
All right. Last question. We talked about a lot today, touched on a lot of different things, and I really do appreciate your time. And audience, I hope you got the value, and I hope you'll share this out with a lot of your network as well. But what's the one thing that you would hope someone would take away from this episode?
The more that you work on yourself, the better leader you'll become.
Couldn't put it any more succinctly than that. That is fantastic. John, I really do appreciate it. I am so glad that you have been part of my life as well. I really appreciate your friendship. I think you are a true example of what leaders should be and continue to strive to be. I think that's why people like talking to you, why you're respected, because as much as you say very nice things, and I appreciate about myself and some of these others, it is because at the core of it, I think they are, and you are good people. And when you're thinking of others. So tell everybody how they can connect with you, the company. We'll put it all in the show notes, but what's the best way if somebody wants to reach out to you?
Yep. So our website is VTechDealerIT.com. My email is jacosta, JACOSTA @VTechDealerIT.com. I'm LinkedIn, social media, Instagram, all the normal platforms. And that's pretty much it.
Great. And audience, this is definitely one person that you should connect with and reach out. One, because he will answer and talk to you, but more importantly, he is really one of the good ones out there. So I appreciate it. Now, audience, you know the drill at the end of every show. Please make sure that you subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Make sure you hit the notification button so that you're notified each week we send out these. If you're listening on a podcast platform, please make sure you review it because we want to, more people to find the show. Please share it out to your network. I know there's someone in your network that can benefit from what John is sharing today. And both John and I know that everyone is really busy and there's a lot of place for you to consume content. The fact that you spent some time with us means the world. And as I say at the end of every episode, leadership is not a title. It is a journey. It is helping others as much as it is helping yourself. But I'm going to edit that a little bit with what John said is you got to take care of yourself first before you can take care of others. So thank you so much. Appreciate it. See you next week, John. Thanks again. Can't wait to see you.
Thank you, Glenn.